What's up, guys? This is Ty Zen. I'm broadcasting from the Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain, cryptocurrency, super duper conference in the great city of Dallas, in the great country of Texas. Okay, so in case you guys don't know, Texas is a great country here on the other side of the world that's surrounded by a country called America. All right. With me today, I have Mr. Snappy Snap, and I'm trying to say that with a straight face, but I can't. Mr. Snappy Snap, right? His real name is Bryan, but he's known as Mr. Snappy Snap. Say hello, Bryan.
Hey. Hi, everybody.
Right. So Mr. Snappy Snap here is basically the communications manager, the outreach person for PIVX.org, right? And if you guys have been following us for a while, you guys know that we're big fans of protecting an individual's financial privacy rights, because out of all the human rights that we have, right, it's easy to see when we are being illegally detained or we're, our free speech is being censored. But when it comes to our financial privacy, where governments, banks, institutions, and businesses, when they violate our privacy rights, we do not know that because they're using technology. So what PIVX proposes is to use a better privacy technology that prevents people from snooping and spying on our financial privacy rights, right? So I saw the PIVX team down at the Miami Bitcoin conference earlier this year, but we couldn't meet up, so now we're here at the Dallas Bitcoin Super Conference, and so I wanted to catch up and discuss one of the a huge issue that's in the cryptocurrency space that a lot of people cover their eyes and will not acknowledge, but the PIVX team has acknowledged, and I want to get Mr. Snappy Snap's opinion on this, okay? So let's talk about the governance in PIVX. First of all, whenever we talk about governance on our channel, a lot of people that are not familiar with what governance is and in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space, they don't know. They think that we're talking about that we want the government involved, right? Could you explain to people what governance means or what it is?
Sure. So governance, from a pseudo Snappy Webster's dictionary definition, is, it's whatever is in place, whether it is actually code base or people or corporate entities or structures that enforce things, right? Or help make decisions. Yeah. So it's sort of that communication and how do we move forward, how to make decisions, etc. That's governance, right? And so even in crypto land, you have actual companies, right? You have a CEO, you have a board, and they are the governing body of that cryptocurrency. So again, you've got a couple people, hopefully trustworthy, etc., making decisions about that project or endeavor, or cryptocurrency, or whatever else it is. You've got projects like PIVX that have taken the route of being a DAO, right? Which is a decentralized autonomous organization. Basically, the way to say it is there is no company, there is no corporate entity, there's no CEO, there's no board per se. It is driven by people. And so then you could say, well, how do you make decisions, right? So built into the code base of PIVX is the ability to submit proposals that get into the blockchain, right? Here's a record of it. And then you have the ability to vote on those proposals, right? So decisions for funding, and this will tie into the treasury, right? So a lot of the decisions for what the project should do, what PIVX should do, marketing budgets, developer budgets, etc., all get decided on votes from the community. And so with PIVX, currently votes are done by masternodes, right? So that's a technology that we inherited from Dash, is the ability to actually vote on things in the blockchain, and right now it's the masternodes. Our masternodes also, about 8 months ago, unanimously decided that's too exclusive. That's still centralization of power to people who can afford 10,000, PIV. And so they said, no, we will give up the exclusive right to voting power and work on designing with the community a better way to actually have governance that's representative of everybody.
Yeah, because right now, let's say somebody in a third world country because if you need 10,000 master nodes, right? I mean, the 10,000 tokens, PIVX tokens, to run a masternode to make a vote, and the tokens cost $6 right now. Yeah, that's 60,000 US dollars that you have to have in a worth of tokens in order to make a cast a vote, right? So before we get into depth about maybe that might be too expensive for the community, every community member in the PIVX community to vote, and be able to afford, right? Let's go back to the governance issue, right? Because on our team we see that the reason why, Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin that Satoshi Nakamoto created, I'm going to refer to it as Bitcoin Core, and then the other ones as Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Private, and all these, right? Just so that my audience knows which one I'm talking about, right? So, and I also wanted, so I know that people get butthurt when I call, especially the Bitcoin Core maximalists, they get butthurt when I call it, Bitcoin Core, but it's just for differentiation. It's not to, what do you call that? It's not to be derogatory or anything like that, okay? Because I know people are going to watch this video in the future, and they need to know which one I'm talking about clearly, right? So we have an issue where SegWit needs to be adopted, and there's no final decision or implementation, right? So, in my opinion, a governance is a final decision and implementation process. It's not just a final decision, but also an implementation process, right? So that when a decision is made by the community to implement SegWit technology, or any kind of technology or upgrade or modification, that the entire network jumps on board after the decision has been made. And Bitcoin never had a voting mechanism or anything like that so that the community can vote on what the upgrade is. Yep. Right. And then after they voted on it to implement SegWit, it still doesn't mean that it's going to be implemented. Right? So we saw this as a huge problem, and we started paying attention to projects like Dash that had a governance, and from Dash we realized that we learned about PIVX that also has a similar governance model, right? So we think that software updates to the entire PIVX network can be done, especially the hard fork updates, can be done with a community vote through the governance process.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, you've got two people with maybe two ideas making decisions for any project that are very centralized, and I won't name what they are, but let's just use that as an example. You've got two people with their ideas versus a project with PIVX. You have an entire network of people with ideas, and they're tapping into things, right? And so if you allow that, and I'll say energy, but that resonance of people to chime in, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to be even more bought into the project. Why? Because they're actually part of it, and they're directing it.
You're making me excited about PIVX right now.
I'm glad, because I'm excited about PIVX. But that's, this goes back to whatever you want to say about Satoshi Nakamoto and the original vision. We've said, hey, we're the Renaissance to a certain degree of that, an individual empowerment of your finances, and not just that, the ability to, if you choose, have a voice and a say and a directive, right? If everyone was mining Bitcoin, this is the thing, if everyone was mining Bitcoin in their house with equal power, then they would all have equal say in what to do with the network, in theory. That's not the case, right? And in Bitcoin Core, we'll use that, right? And in the other ones, it's not the case. So in a project like PIVX, there's actually the potential, and it's already working, for individual people to have a voice and a directive in the futures project. Right, there you go. That's it.
Okay, so let's go back to about how this voting is actually done. You're saying that in order to cast a vote in the PIVX network, you have to own, currently, you have to own a masternode, right? And that masternode requires a minimum of 10,000 tokens, and each token currently is valued at $6 right now. So you have to have $60,000 worth of tokens, right, to make a vote. Okay, so let's just use this as an example, right? I'm going to play devil's advocate. Let's just say that there's a proposal from the community for feature A, and you want it. And there's a proposal from somebody else that wants to do feature B, and I want that. However, I don't have enough money to buy or operate a PIVX masternode like you do. Let's say you have more money, so now you are the one with the money and all the other guys with the money that want feature A, isn't it unfair that you guys get to make the decisions on what the PIVX network, what direction it goes in? And maybe that feature A may not benefit everyone. Maybe the feature that I want to vote on has more benefit to the entire community, but I can't vote on it because I don't have as much money as you do. So what is your response to that?
I'll go, there's two sides of this. One is, and this is where I do the empowerment speech. Never let money or the lack of it stand in the way of a vision, a belief of what you want to do and who you want to be. And with a project, if you believe it, right? Let's say that, yeah, I've got one masternode and you don't have the masternode and it's a 1-0 vote, right? But if you go and rally enough people
that have a masternode?
That have a masternode and say, here's why, right? Develop relationships, develop the trust, then, like, yeah, then I could be outvoted, right, in terms of the proposal, and vice versa. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect, and that ties back to the community, right? Communication within a community from all angles. The second aspect is what you picked on, and this is why the PIVX community of masternodes voted to say, hey, we give up that exclusive right, right? We need people that have one PIV to be able to put in a voice into the network that actually means something. Right, and so that's what's going on in the PIVX community right now, is how do you design a brand new governance? And that's what we're working on, is do you give, you know, tiers of stakers their own population and they have to come to a consensus, and then masternode holders have to come to a consensus, and then another group has to come to a consensus, and maybe 2 out of 3 on some weighted scale have to be 60% yes or whatever. It's not done yet, but that's what we're working through, so that way masternode holders can't game the system, and vice versa. Like, let's say we just gave stakers a 1 vote. Well, then in theory, masternode owners could liquidate their masternodes for the vote, and now they've got 10,000 individual votes and they vote in. So it's a very interesting and intricate process to design a new governance system that's fairer for people.
So here's what I'm thinking, right? If, let's just make up an imaginary scenario where you put in $10,000 originally into the Ethereum ICO, and now you have over $10 million, and you go buy up $10 million worth of PIVX masternodes. If I have no money, there's no way, I don't care how much people I rally up, you're going to be the one that's controlling all the masternodes. Exactly. Right? Exactly. So it's important that the votes from the small people matter, right? And this is what I'm going to propose to the PIVX community. Since I'm a holder of PIVX tokens, so I am going to propose this, right? Oh, by the way, speaking of being a holder of PIVX tokens, right, I have to disclose this to the audience, right, that it's safe to assume that I hold the PIVX tokens that I'm talking about, and so there is a 100% conflict of interest that I'm talking about something that I'm invested in. So it's important that you guys understand that when I talk about this, that there's absolute conflict of interest. So don't think whether or not there's a conflict of interest or not, right? And in the future, if our team submits a proposal into the governance system, not to you, but to the PIVX network, and they approve of it, and we receive PIVX tokens for it, then there's even more of a conflict of interest, okay? Because now the network, not an individual, but the network is giving us tokens, to help out with their project. So just be aware of that, guys, that when we talk about this, just be aware of the conflict of interest as you guys are listening to this video. So we need to disclose that, right? Okay, so let's just say this is something that I learned from James D'Angelo. He was like one of the biggest Bitcoin evangelists back, 4 or 5 years ago. Him and Andreas Antonopoulos were like the guys that everybody learned about Bitcoin from, right? So one of the things I learned from my friend James D'Angelo is that, out of all the governance processes or systems or technologies that humans have invented, the legislative process has been the best one that we have created so far. Absolutely. Where humans go in there, make a vote, and then we tally up the votes, and then that's the decision that is made, right? What I propose to the PIVX community or any cryptocurrency community that's trying to develop a governance process is to somehow include live human votes. Set a day where you can actually hey, here's a Skype session or here's a video session. Everyone can come here and vote live. One person, one vote, if they want it.
Again,
Yeah, but with privacy, yeah.
But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it also goes back to that human connection.
Yeah.
Right? It matters. So some people might not want that. That's okay.
Yeah.
But allowing that opportunity for a network of people to come together, and it goes back to conversations, right? And the thing is too, if people can come together with differences of opinions and even differences of proposals, we might think it's best for the network. You might think it's best for the network. But if we can get away from our egos and go, the decision that's going to be made, we have to trust is going to be best for the ecosystem and also for us as individuals, right? So, but yeah, absolutely. That type of a live interface or even a tally count to see the tallies coming up, yeah, that would be, we have that, but it's not as beautifully presented as I think we would both want.
Okay, so let's walk through the governance process here so the viewers will have an idea in their head of an example, okay? So let's just say that a community member submits a proposal, let's just say to run a PIVX conference or create a new interface or a new wallet. They create a proposal, they submit it into the network, right? Let's talk about two types of proposals, right? And I can envision two types of proposals being submitted into the PIVX network. One is to update the software. Has to do with the software. Yeah. And then the other one are like marketing and community outreach stuff. So let's talk about the difficult one, which is the software updates, right? Let's say that I'm a developer or an engineer and I think that, hey, this is a better way to increase the privacy of PIVX, right? But there needs to be a hard fork. I submit the code to the GitHub and everything or whatever, and I ask the community to vote on it, right? So the master nodes get to submit the votes. Is that how that works? Or can you walk us through that process?
So at any individual, so right now there's also there's a little bit of a cost to submit a proposal. It's 50 PIV, something that's also being reevaluated in terms of that cost.
So that's about $3,000 US dollars at $6 a token.
50 times 6.
Oh no, 300.
300. Yeah, so it's about $300 to submit a proposal. Again, there is a barrier to entry. It also helps the network from getting spam.
Spam.
Yeah, exactly.
Spam proposal.
Yes, exactly. So, but with that, so then you basically would go into your core wallet, command line, you submit your proposal, and that involves a couple things of a proposal name, a link to your proposal, which is usually put up on the forums, right? So those proposals are said, here's what I propose, here's how much I'm asking for. So it's that, and a bunch of other things, and you get a hash, right, of that transaction. Then you do one more step with that hash, and then that gives you the vote hash. So then that is the vote hash that the master nodes take and say, you know, whatever, master node budget, vote this hash, yes. Click, boom, then I just voted yes, or no. Click no, boom, voted no.
Okay,
so once a proposal goes live, broadcast it through the network, all right, then the master nodes have the ability to vote yes or no on that proposal. The other thing too is that voting window is up every 30 days, okay? So it's not a rolling, it's open forever, it's every 30 days. Any proposal that's submitted within that 30 days is up for voting.
Okay, so let's just say that there's 1,000 master nodes right now out there.
There's 2,100.
Okay, 2,100, right? And let's just say that someone submits that software update proposal to hard fork the PIVX network, and let's say, what percentage of the master nodes has to vote yes or no on it?
So that's a variable because it also depends on what other proposals are being submitted. And by that I mean this. There's about 21,000 PIV available every cycle, so every 30 days, that come from the Treasury, right? So if you submitted a proposal and say, I need 5,000 PIV, if no other proposal submitted, you just need a majority, right? You just need more yes than no. The issue that comes into play is if there's more proposals that are asking for more than the budget than that round, then it becomes the higher ratio of yes to no's will win.
But what I'm saying is, like, for the software update, that doesn't require money. That doesn't require tokens. It's just an update, right? So I'm saying that if there's 2,100 master nodes out there, what's going to require them to vote? Like what forces them to vote?
There isn't.
So because you can run...
You could have one master node vote yes and nobody vote no, and if there's no other proposals, if you're not in any budget conflict, then that would go through.
So someone can submit a proposal at the end of the month. If nobody votes on it, then you get one yes vote.
And it's
then
not in conflict. Like if you're not in conflict in terms of trying to compete other proposals for budgets, right? Because again, there's only 21,000 PIV. So let's say there's proposals that came in and the total amount that's being asked is 40,000. You can't fund all of them. So the proposals that have the higher ratio of yes and no's are the ones that'll get funded that round. But to your point, yeah, if you submit a proposal and there's funding available for your proposal, or it's not even getting funded, it's just we want to do this.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, because it's just a software update. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking that, hey, this is a code.
You still would require a more yes than no vote. In that case, if you're trying to outcompete, even with an outcompeting budget, even though you're not asking for anything, you still, if you're outcompeting.
Also, so basically, even if I just submit a software update, it doesn't require money. I just still need to ask for more tokens.
No, you would still have to ask for more yes votes than no votes from the master nodes.
Okay. So, but my question is, what's forcing the master nodes to vote?
There is no.
Because they can just sit it out.
They could do nothing. They could actually do nothing. And this goes back to the point that we talked about earlier, giving the freedom to other people to make decisions, right? Because you could, in theory, say masternode owners are lazy. They've got 10,000 PIV. Why do they care, right? Yeah. They're rich. They're whales. Like they don't care about. It's the people that care about it, and that's the point. Giving that power back to others to actually have a voice is going to be more impactful, and I think it's going to actually push PIVX into frontiers we haven't seen in crypto, because now you're allowing the universe and the collective community to be a part of it.
Okay, well that because like in the Decred project, the way they have their governance set up is that you get rewarded for voting. So it incentivizes you to go vote. If not, then you don't get rewarded.
Yeah. That's again, it's a blocker reward. It's the same incentivization. Like, hey, actually do something and you'll get rewarded for it. So yeah, it's a great method as well.
Okay, so right now, it's still not clear to me, like out of those 2,100 master nodes, how a software update would go through. Now, I'm saying that if it's for a contentious hard fork, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people voting on it. So that's not going to be something that only gets 1 or 2 votes, right? So
let's say half the community of masternode voters think it's a great idea. Well, then at that point, it's coming down to, are people actually going to be voting for it? And so then you could go around and say, hey, if you're masternodes, here's why I think, basically proposing, pitching. You pitch them and say, this is why we need to do this. And enough yes go in, then guess what? It's getting implemented.
Okay. All right, well, I think that this is going to be huge. To me right now, blockchain is so early that I believe that just having a governance process where you can make final decisions and implement that decision into the network is huge. And even if it's not perfect, it's still better than a network like Bitcoin Core that does not have, or any of the Bitcoin projects like Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Private. None of them have a governance process at this moment. So they're going to run into, in my opinion, problems down the line.
It's bottlenecks.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to the whole issue of being decentralized, right? So you might have a decentralized or distributed ledger, but your decision making is bottlenecked.
Yeah.
So in projects like PIVX, we're further along in the process of being more decentralized in all aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad that we went through this so that the audience can understand more about because we've been talking about how blockchains that don't have they might have the best technology, but if they don't have some type of governance process to allow them to modify their software and upgrade and make changes and adapt to new environments, right? It's not going to be successful for very long, So if you guys like these types of videos where we have boots on the ground, talking to the real teams, the real projects that are working on these cryptocurrency projects, and not just a bunch of people online, anonymous people online that we don't know of, right? Join our newsletter. It's at www.cryptocurrency.market/newsletter and follow us there. You can also follow me on Twitter at HeyTaiZen. It's spelled just like you hear it. If you guys want to learn more about the PIVX project, right, go to PIVX.org and learn more there. And then also, do you have a Twitter that people can follow you at?
Yeah, so it's actually my name, so it's Bryan Doreian. You know, we'll drop it in your videos if you want. So Bryan Doreian.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll get that information from Mr. Snappy offline. You want that information public?
You can give my Twitter.
Okay. All right. We'll
for you.
Yeah. It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I feel a little bromance in the air. Okay, so I'll get the correct contact information, put it under this video so that you guys can reach out to Mr. Snappy Snap here, right? How did you come up with Mr. Snappy Snap anyway?
My wife's gonna laugh her rear end off about this one. So back, you know, like 4, 5, 6 years ago in crypto, it was even more steampunk and like, you know, tech heads. And everybody had handles, right? Like, well, especially like in the old troll box of trading rooms, everybody had handles, right? So it's like Slick Pie 43 and, you know, like all of that stuff. And so it's like, all right, I'm new to this. I got to come up with a handle. And somebody, you know, I was in crypto projects and like, man, you're really snappy about stuff. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to give myself a nickname. And I'm like, I'm Snappy Snap. And of course, then it became like, of course, you beat other people to giving yourself a nickname. So that's how Snappy Snap was born, and here we are. So
there it is, guys. If you watch this video, you just heard the origin of Mr. Snappy Snap. All right. All right. Well, thanks for watching this video, guys. Make sure to follow us. Make sure to check out PIVX.org, and then make sure you guys follow Bryan here on his Twitter based on the information below the video. And thanks for watching this video, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.